Welcome to Fit Skin Nurse Podcast. It's Felicity Ward here, a registered nurse and founder of Fit Skin Clinic in Bondi Junction, Australia. If you enjoy the cosmetic industry, business chat and balancing mum life, then this podcast is for you. Formerly the Fit Injector Podcast. Our content is designed for medical professionals for educational purposes. Please follow and like, and for more you can head to my YouTube channel, Instagram and TikTok. If you're a cosmetic nurse in Australia, you know that there is a challenging situation happening in Queensland this year. Today for episode 26, I'm speaking with an amazing group of women in Queensland, registered nurses who have formed Queensland Aesthetic Nurses United to advocate for nurses working within aesthetics. In my previous episode 25 with Telisa, we dived into the nationwide regulation changes that have occurred within the aesthetic space by AHPRA and TGA over the past few years. If you haven't caught up on that episode, I would recommend doing so because this one is an extension of those changes, but further into what Queensland Health have changed within Queensland, which has had massive impacts on cosmetic businesses. If you're a registered nurse in Australia, it is important to understand what is happening in Queensland as it could happen nationwide. And in this episode, we will cover what we all need to do to make sure that that doesn't happen. Today I'm speaking with Rhianne Heath from By the Bay Cosmetics, Britteny Day from Dare Aesthetics, Lisa Oakes from the Glowco Aesthetics, and McRae from Attuned Aesthetics. These wonderful women have formed Queensland Aesthetic Nurses United. All of the links are in the show notes. Let's get into it. Hello everyone. Hi. Thank you so much for saying yes to coming and having a chat today. You are all doing the most amazing work for our industry right now. To those of you watching and listening, please go and follow Queensland Aesthetic Nurses on Instagram. All the important links will be in the show notes. So let's introduce you all one by one. If you can say who you are, where you work, your clinic name, how long you've been in business, if you work solo with a team, whether you're a mum, clinical trainer, let's go around. Let's start with you, Lisa.
Oh, hi. So I'm Lisa. I am in Gordon Park, which is just about 5 k's north of Brisbane City. I've been in business about 2.5 years. So I own the Glowco Aesthetics. It's just myself. I'm a single injector. I've been a nurse for about 18 years. I've done a lot of basically hematology, a little bit more into the oncology and palliative care in the last sort of 10 years. I'm a mum. I have 2 beautiful babies. They're 7 and 9. And I suppose they are really the reason that I started my business. It was just a little bit too much. Once you have kids dealing with the palliative care side, and a lot of mums my age, it sort of took its toll on me after so long. And then I just decided that this is something I can do. I'm so fortunate. I have a clinic that's about 200 meters from my house, and I can come down here whenever I want. And it is really family orientated. My kids come here all the time and they help me do business things before they disappear before patients. So, and it gives me the flexibility, I think, that most mums sort of want when the kids are this age where we can go to school and we can do important things. You can do swimming carnivals and excursions. It gives me that. And I suppose that's actually why I want to do it. Like I always say to my patients, I don't want to make millions. I just want to be able to be the best mum that I can and have a business that supports that. So I still work in the hospital about every now and then, maybe once a week or once a fortnight, depending on what they need, but it's only casual. So I still have that side as well, just in case this side, as we know, might fail. Hopefully it doesn't. But yeah, anyway, that's me.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Let's go to you, Megan.
Hello. I have been nursing over 30 years. So we were the first nursing degree cohort through way back in the 90s. And I've worked as a community nurse manager for the whole of Queensland. I've raised 3 kids as a single mum. They've all grown, and I opened my own clinic about 9 months ago. So I still work as a clinical trainer for Cryomed. I work across devices as well as the art filler range. I've had some experience as a business development manager, and I still work 1 day a week in dermatology, and I have a beautiful doctor that I work with 1 Saturday a week, so he's my prescribing doctor as well, but I go off and do a little hustle with him at his practice because he's got all the gadgets that I love to play with that I can't afford yet. So the fact sheets dropped about 3 weeks after my business opened. And having been in the industry for over 10 years, I really did not see that coming. And if I'd known that that was coming, I definitely wouldn't have ventured into my own business. So I knew it was going to be difficult, but I did not see that coming. So it's been an interesting time to try and build as a new business, and not being able to advertise, and having to wear the additional costs of dispensing on top of prescribing, and the prescription companies actually, or the platforms, on costs that then you have to absorb, which ultimately get passed on to your patients. So that's QANU formed, I guess, from about May of last year. I think we got together. None of us knew each other before. Actually, I knew Britt. Britt and I had done some training together. But QANU formed because we realised that we weren't being represented in Queensland as well as we would have liked.
Yeah, amazing. It's so good. Thanks, Megan. Let's go to Britteny.
Hi, my name's Britt. I have been injecting going on 7 years now. So I actually came straight out of uni. I did 3 months in mental health and I went straight into aesthetics, which was always the dream. I have had Dare Aesthetics now in Mooloolaba, Queensland for 18 months, so close to 2 years. A little bit rocky there for a minute. But I have no kids. I have 2 cats. They are my babies. And I just love having my own business, my own patients, because of the flexibility, the support that I get to offer. As a solo nurse, it's very one-on-one. It's very personal to me. And I think that I've been able to attract, I guess I call them my tribe of patients. And, I can have direct contact with them at any time of the day, and they have that contact with me. I haven't worked out a work-life balance yet, but that's what I love. And I love that I've built this community doing something that I love so much. I also have experience in clinical training for some individual training companies as well.
Amazing. Thanks, Britteny. And Rhi.
Hi, I'm Rhi. I'm from Hervey Bay, Queensland, and I own By the Bay Cosmetics. Actually in business 2 years this month, so that's exciting. Kind of like Lisa, I went down this track for the flexibility. And now being a single mum, I really need that. I really enjoy what I do, and it brings me so much joy being able to bring joy to other people's lives. I have so much respect for these ladies since meeting them. I feel like we talk nearly every day. It's our second family. I just hope that we can make some change in Queensland, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's so nice to learn more about you all, because I've only obviously spoken to you via Instagram. Yes. So let's get into it. For those who perhaps don't know a lot about what's happening in Queensland, let's do a rundown of exactly what's happened over the past, this year.
Where do we start? Who wants to take the floor?
I suppose this sort of all came to a head. Queensland Health released a fact sheet in December, but I don't think the December of 2024, I don't think a lot of people actually knew about it until about mid-January. So
I
right.
actually was the one to explode that into the fresh chat. Yeah. No, I was in Melbourne. I was doing a clinical training course, and someone sent it to me, and I said, this is a joke. This is not, because what the fact sheet was stating was eradicating everything that we've done for the X amount of time. And I was like, this is a joke. This isn't real. And when I put it in the fresh chat and I just said, has anyone else seen this? Like, anyone have any information? Our worlds imploded then and there. That was it.
You were the snowball, Britt.
I can remember that day so clearly, because it was actually my husband and I, we are in, obviously this is our business together, and we were sitting there having our Christmas party between the two of us, and we might have had a couple of sparklings, just being so excited that we'd had such a beautiful year and what we'd created. And then this sort of hit, and we were reading it saying, is this real? Like what you were saying, is this real? This can't possibly be real. This basically eliminates anybody doing this in our industry. And we were like, this. And then I think we may have had a few more sparklings in almost drowning our sorrows, thinking, is this the end of what we've just created? Because we were so proud of what we had done. So I can remember that day so clearly. I think it was about mid-January.
It was still holidays.
Yeah.
And
then it sort of went almost downhill from there. I can remember the snowball from the fresh chat and everybody just saying, how is this happening? Because we'd actually just recently also been hit by the Queensland Health guidelines that said that we all had to have our infection control. So that was about September the year before, and then these new fact sheets hit. And then everybody sort of was saying, I think it was really, what are they doing? Is this actually going to work? And I think our scripting companies were all also trying to scramble to find a way for it to work. And we were all sort of relying on them a lot to know what was happening. And I suppose we were hoping that Queensland Health had actually spoken to people in the industry and learnt how it had worked. But from what we found out, they hadn't really communicated with anybody, and they were just going off their own accord. I think Britteny knows a bit more about that, in that she had spoken with the Medicines and Poisons unit after this sort of dropped.
And on that, they alluded to in the fact sheets that they had met with key stakeholders in Queensland. So we were under the impression that, okay, you've met with the unions, you've met with the nursing board, you've met with APRA, the people that govern us, and obviously our nursing membership with the Cosmetic Nurses Association. So we will be represented, and that was a little bit of an illusion we woke up to in about April. So we're a little bit late to that.
Yeah. And what it actually changed was the way that we were able to store our medicines as registered nurses. So basically it was saying that as registered nurses that we were unable to order or store the medicines that we use in our clinics day to day, which obviously is a huge issue because we need the medicines. So we kind of went down this path. The scripting companies came out with a few different ideas, and one was this doctor's model where we would hire a doctor that would visit our clinics, and they would have custody and control of our medicines. The second model is the pharmacy model, so more disruptive to our businesses and our clients. So the client comes in, we do the consultation, we script with the doctor, and then that order gets sent to the pharmacy. The medicine is then dispensed from the pharmacy to our clinics, and obviously we cannot inject on the day. I'll probably talk more about it, I guess, as we go, but there's a lot of issues with this model as well.
And just to backtrack a little bit, the very first fact sheet, there's actually been, I think, 4 editions of the fact sheet since December. And the very first edition of the fact sheet that talked about the pharmacy model actually said that patients would have to get their own script and get that dispensed and then come to our clinic with their medication. So it was really that we wouldn't have much to do with that at all, that the patient would receive their medication and then come to us. And we had obviously a lot of issues with that when we're talking about cold chain, patients having access to those medications that can be quite dangerous if they're then injecting themselves at home. Because I don't think too many people would, if they had that medication, bring it to somebody to inject. And how do we know what's happened to that medication in the meantime?
Yeah.
And how do we know that medication is legitimately from the pharmacy?
Yeah.
So they're taking this S4 and putting it in their handbag, going around Westfield, and then we just hope that they're going to come back into the clinics, and then they've already paid the pharmacy for the medication, and then we need to somehow work out a service fee on top of this.
How do you charge for that?
So it devalues what we're doing. So just to recap for our viewers, so basically overnight these fact sheets said that nurses can't order or store medications within their cosmetic clinics, which we've done for as long as we can all remember, right?
Yeah.
And I suppose then they realised what sort of a issue they may have caused with that. So they then changed the fact sheet again, and that's when it came that we could have them in clinic for a consultation and then send away for the medication. It get delivered to us for us to inject. So there's been multiple. I actually have a long document of all the different changes that have happened of the document over the time. So it's very interesting, just little wordings and how they've very much changed our ability to do really anything. So every time that everybody went back to them with issues, they've then changed it so that it completely writes us out of what we can do.
Yeah.
And on that, there's been no announcement that those changes have happened. So it's up to us. The onus is on us to go back to the fact sheet. And you feel like you've been gaslit because you read it again, the second, third version, and you're like, hang on a minute. I swear to God, this wasn't here before. And it wasn't.
Yeah, very open to interpretation.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
And have any of you, had you implemented the doctor-supported model before that was changed?
Yes.
You all had. And how was that working?
I mean, I don't think the scripting companies at any time have had it down pat because, as the girls have said, the fact sheet continues to change and it depends on who you're talking to that's giving you different information. So everyone's trying to do the right thing. But the doctor model, essentially, we started paying for it, but we couldn't, no one could tell us the frequency in which the doctor had to be at the clinic, or if that doctor had to practice their profession out of the clinic, or what kind of NP or doctor was actually responsible. Did this practitioner have to specialize in cosmetic medicine, or did they not? There were just so many inconsistencies, and no matter which regulatory body we reached out to, they didn't have the answers either. It pretty much just came down to, you know what, this is your interpretation of it, do with it what you will. So here we are trying to be compliant, and we're implementing these models, and we're paying for these models, and we're trying to make sure that we're covered for insurance and XYZ. But nothing was clear, and it still isn't.
Yeah. And in saying that, like, we're totally not against regulation. We think, as nurses, regulation is great. We like to have rules. We like to have boundaries about the ways that we practice. But can you tell us what you want? That would be great.
And put it in writing, because a lot of it is hearsay, right? So, I mean, we go back to the doctor models didn't come in until the 1st of July. So there was quite a few months where Queensland Health was saying you had to do this, this and this, but the doctor models hadn't actually been implemented. And we actually had, Rhi, I know, closed her business for quite a few weeks. And I know lots of other nurses closed their business. I stopped doing quite risky procedures at the time because we were told by our insurance companies, well, some people were told by their insurance companies, not everybody, that they were not covered for anything unless they were actually compliant with the Queensland Health legislation. And so you had all these nurses being told they're not compliant and wouldn't be covered if something happened. So most people just went, I'm not going to take that risk. I need to step away until the doctor models had actually been implemented. So people were out of business for quite a few weeks, and that really just threw everyone up in the air. And then you had other people saying, well, no, I'm completely covered. My insurance company haven't reached out to me. So it was really quite a scary time as to what you were and weren't covered for in your business. And as a nurse, that's quite frightening because we really do want to do the right thing.
Yeah, it's frightening, and I guess it's insulting as well, as educated professionals who have done a lot of work to get to this point, to have our businesses pulled out from under us like that.
Yeah, and all working, and all, highly experienced, working in these, purpose-built clinics, working with prescribing doctors, buying all the premium products. It's just like, where is this coming from? If it's coming from these, non-medical professionals in all these news articles that we had over the last couple of years, importing counterfeit product, treating people in their living room, and then they're ending up in hospital. That wasn't us. That wasn't the nurses. And of course, TGA and AHPRA go, oh, well, they're not a medical professional, so we don't want anything to do with them. And, and you would all be the same, like, the amount of patients say, my clinic's in Bondi Junction, so we have a lot of patients coming from overseas, moving from, England and Ireland, and obviously we know the UK is a wild west when it comes to injectables. When they sit on the bed and they go, I have never felt this safe. It's the first time they've gone through a consent form, the first time they've spoken with a doctor, the first time they've even heard about risks, and they've had like nose filler 3 times before, you know, and to think like Australia is very highly regulated. So pushing it to this point where it feels like we're not being recognised as a specialty and feels like we're being, you know, pushed out of business, it's just ridiculous.
And that's the thing, there actually is no data to support what they're saying. They're saying that it's a safety issue, and that's the reason why that this fact sheet dropped, but there is no data supporting that.
No, not at all. So I was like, where's this coming from? Like you all said before, who have they spoken to when they came up with these fact sheets that seem ever changing, and it seems like you still don't have, you know, actually a path forward that makes sense?
And so the party line has been, Felicity, when we've met with the Medicines and Regulation Unit and the policy advisor for Tim Nichols, was nothing has changed. This is just an interpretation of legislation. So we were all apparently running illegally for something like 7, 8 years.
2019, wasn't it? It
19,
yeah.
2019, before the revision of the fact sheets was made. So the party line has been, but nothing has changed. You under these scripting guidelines where you have logs and checks and balances and everything is locked away and accounted for, that was never compliant. So for me, it's like, well, my insurance I was paying for these, you know, great premiums, and I was paying for a service that I was receiving and believed to be compliant, and yet somebody must have been told that they were compliant with these scripting platforms back in 2019. So the revision of it is questionable as to, you know, what's the motive behind, what's the why? When the rest of the country has, the ability to have a poisons license, like Melbourne and Western Australia.
Yeah, Tasmania.
We were told that was actually a workaround on existing legislation in Victoria, and therefore that is created on a loophole. Yeah. And Queensland Health would not do that. When we asked them about an endorsement or a pathway, like for nurse prescribing, they said it's not essential medicine, and you are not a specialty. And there are no pathways to become a specialty as a nurse practitioner. So we've been stonewalled. So, you know, we've had quite a few conversations where we've just been shut down as to, you know, it can happen in the rest of the country in this way, even though we're under the same governance as nurses. And Tim Nichols' agenda is to roll this out nationally, which is, you know, concerning.
Yeah, well, let's talk more about Tim Nichols. You've obviously done some videos on the Queensland Aesthetic Nurses page. Lisa, you're going to talk about him?
Well, Tim Nichols is actually my local minister. So he is the Minister for Health in Queensland. I know that he's been in politics a very long time. And he seems to have a lot of power within the party, something that I'm not political at all. I've always tried to stay away from it. And it was just something that we've obviously fallen into as part of this group. And so I didn't realize you could actually go to your local MP. So I did rock up to his office just to have a chat. He was there, but he wouldn't speak to me. You know, they say you have to send emails. So I was sending emails and they're just getting no reply. So I do ring them and they say, we know who you are. You are not getting a meeting. There is no change to the legislation. You will not get a meeting. This has to come down to the health department. And so we did actually then, you know, all the emails that I get forwarded to the health department. And we have spoken to one of the ladies at the health department who is an advisor for him. And again, it's the same line. It is this, nothing has changed. You need to fall into line and do one of these 2 models. So Minister Nichols will not meet with us. We're really pushing for that. And I know that it seems to be an issue as to why he won't. We have actually had meetings all over Queensland with different ministers from different departments, and all of them trying to understand what has happened. Most of them think it's a little bit crazy. Even the men, the men are like, oh, I don't have this done, but this just doesn't seem to make sense. And we're like, it doesn't make sense to anybody. But we know that some of the meetings that we'd actually had with the Liberal Party have been cancelled on advice from Minister Nichols to cancel meeting with us because he has it sorted, is what we're being told. So, it is, we are being stonewalled. We're not sure why. We did have a meeting with the small business minister, which we thought was positive at the time. And they said to us, go away, get all this data and come back to us. So we put together all of this document that had a lot of data about, how many people work for these nurses in their clinics, what sort of income we'd be losing, the financial impact of quite a lot. And when we sent it through, we've since not heard anything. So it's almost like we're not quite sure. And that's when we actually heard that Minister Nichols was trying to take this national instead of just Queensland. And from what I hear, Queensland is always the testing state for how things are then rolled out throughout the rest of Australia. So, when they hear that Minister Nichols is trying to get this, from what he's done in Queensland, pushed to the rest of Australia, often that's taken on. And that was not something that I'd ever heard before. So when they say that we're the testing state and this is what's happening, this will probably come national, you go, oh my goodness, can this craziness just not stop, as to give us the data as to why we're being unsafe?
I guess, yeah, it's disappointing though too. Like these people are meant to be working for us, but they won't even speak to us. Like, I don't understand why.
It seems very strange that they won't speak to you. One thing is to do this, but how odd to not want to speak to anyone and, go cancelling other meetings.
That's it. Agree to disagree. And
yeah.
Give us the reason why. But what we are told is we've met with the stakeholders, and well, who?
Yeah.
Who are they? Are they the nurses on the ground doing this, where this is our survival? Because you're threatening clinic closures. And part of the polling that we did for this small business ministry was to work out, where we're at with businesses closing. So, and the difficulty, because we don't have poisons license, is knowing, because we've got so many different platforms serving so many different nurses, it's really hard to quantify how many clinics are actually involved. And so we're estimating somewhere between 600 and 900 clinics in Queensland that are nurse-led. 95% of those are women-led small businesses. So the impact on the community and the knock-on effect of that, because we service those communities, they're working in those little hubs where you're next door to the hairdresser and the beautician, and we hire, other women as well. So support local community and schools and whatnot. So it's a big impact on communities and women. And women vote.
Yeah, women in business, successful women in business, supporting families and children. And so, Britt, you recently visited your local Member of Parliament, who is also the Minister of Women, Fiona Simpson. Tell us how that went.
So Meg and I decided that after, I think it's been about 9 months of stonewalling from Miss Simpson as well, multiple emails. She is a member of my electorate, so I can actually see her office from my bedroom. Multiple calls, emails, all of the things, no response. So Meg and I decided that we were going to head in there and just request another formal meeting. That's all we want, is just to put, our faces to the cause and to have a formal meeting with her, particularly as the Minister for Women and as the member of my electorate. When we went in there, Meg graciously took over, because I get a little bit hot and heavy. Meg took over and we just spoke with the receptionist, and, we just kind of let her know what we were there for and that we'd love to organise a meeting with Ms. Simpson. And we had been told, we've been pushed pillar to post. So it was, if this is your Minister of the Electorate, that you can go into the electoral office and speak with them there. When I've done that, I've now been pushed to the ministerial office in Brisbane, who then pushed me back to the Sunshine Coast, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. So long story short, out of that meeting, nothing eventuated. We were told that, we would get an email or a phone call or something. However, as you would have seen, we made a reel about going into the office, and it got a little bit of support behind it. And for the first time, I got a response from Fiona Simpson.
Well done.
Thank you. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing.
Yeah.
She essentially said that we hadn't been denied any help. We hadn't been denied a meeting. We hadn't been denied anything. That she was kind of off us for filming in her office and XYZ. And to be honest, I kind of took it as a bit of a threat. There was a little bit of the response was, I'll discuss having a meeting with you. I'll think about it. But given that you filmed in our office and you've taken this online, not sure what I can do for you. And it's now been about 2.5, 3 weeks. So I've just followed up with her this morning to kind of say, we would love to have a meeting with you. This isn't about hostility or anything like that. It's just that unfortunately, we had to take it to that place online to get any kind of response. And I see her out here. We were sitting in the same dining room having dinner at a new restaurant. So she's going to all of these things. And all I wanted was hi, Britt, like, thanks for your email. Like, just a recognition that they know what's going on and that they're listening to us. And, as a woman-led industry who is servicing predominantly women, I feel like this is absolutely an issue for the Minister of Women. And she kind of, like Meg said before, with the gaslighting behaviour, it was like, well, do you want to meet with her as a member of your electorate or the member for women? And it was like, any capacity in which she can help, please. So, yeah, I mean, a response is better than nothing, but it wasn't the response that we were waiting for. But this is the thing, is that we know that they know what's going on. They know us and they know what we're, the answers that we're looking for and the support that we're after. At the end of the day, if they turn around and say, listen, we've exhausted everything that we can, that's okay. We'll figure it out eventually. We always do. But it's just that recognition and acknowledgement of the fight that we're putting up here and what we're actually trying to accomplish and the why behind it. Because essentially, this is for patient safety. This has got nothing to do with, obviously it does affect us as women in business, but this affects our patients in far more than anything. And it just doesn't make sense to us.
Yeah, totally. And of course you're going to take it to social media because you already feel like you're getting nowhere with them. You've got no voice. So of course social media is what's going to blow these things up.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Write an email. I have personally written probably 5 emails a month. So you sound like a crazy person. They probably think we are crazy people, but we're actually just trying to get somewhere and get something done, because this isn't like, yes, it affects me and it affects everybody here, but it affects the whole of Queensland. Like, it is our whole industry, and everyone's saying, oh, we'll just adapt or we'll hire doctors. Well, there isn't that many doctors in the state, but also they're not actually telling us how often these doctors have to visit our clinic. So people are like, oh, we'll just hire a doctor. They don't need to come. I'm like, well, they do. According to the newest fact sheet, they actually have to practice in your clinic. And they're like, okay, well, let's get nurse practitioners. And I'm like, yeah, but the costs that are associated with that aren't that cheap either. So everybody wants their cut of what we're doing, and they're like, we'll do the pharmacy model. Well, the pharmacy model is still an extra minimum $25 per patient, and that adds up as a small business every week. So every single thing that they've said that we have to implement adds significant costs to what we're already doing. So that has the flow-on effect then of costs that we have to charge our patients, and that for what? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly. Absorb those costs, and then, businesses go under, pass those costs on, and then, patients obviously are going to get annoyed if every, appointment it's like, oh, we've got to add this on and add this on. I actually saw in one of the chat groups that someone had a doctor and they were having to add an additional $350 per appointment just to cover the fee of the doctor being there on top of, let's say, your 3 areas of anti-wrinkle. Crazy.
I mean, that's also the same issue with the pharmacy model, though, in terms, if we're just talking expense-wise, before we even move on to the safety of these models, price-wise, it's mind-blowing. Like, it just doesn't sorry, I just forgot where I was going with that. My brain just not.
It's just
What
The
were we
cost of
saying?
the
who
pharmacy
benefits.
model, yeah, you have to also buy an individual
Oh, the
vial.
vial.
Oh, yes. Let's talk everyone through how this works, because I don't think the rest of us understand with this whole buying a vial thing.
Sorry, my brain was like. So that's the problem with the pharmacy model in terms of cost, is that patients are now required to buy that unit. So that one vial of anti-wrinkle, they own that toxin, and that is theirs. So they have to buy that entire vial. And as we all know, that vial is to be discarded after 24 hours, which means that it can't be used for any of their follow-up appointments throughout the year. It can't be used for a top-up in 2 weeks' time. And, similarly with the dermal filler, I mean, it's not so bad, but they're still paying for, a unit of dermal filler, and then if they come back for extra treatments, they're paying for it over and over and over again. There's also a dispense fee on top of the delivery fees, XYZ. So it's all of these things that you have to account for. But my patients are not going to pay for a whole vial of toxin that they can't use. And then, so what's the alternative? They start going crazy with, okay, we'll treat this and do this and do this. So we're actually endorsing the overuse of a medication.
Yeah. And if they're worried about things like body dysmorphia, and now suddenly, they're like, oh, we'll put the whole vial in for someone who maybe only came to get their frown or, a lip flip or something. And then does that mean, say, okay, in 2 weeks, someone's got a Spock brow, what, you can't, too bad? Or a whole new vial for what, 1 or 2 units? Insane.
Yeah.
But there is the other side of the pharmacy model as well. So there's almost two models within the pharmacy model. And then one of the companies is actually offering per unit dispensing. So they will actually get the pharmacy in a sterile environment to draw up. So they obviously make it up, draw it up, and dispense it in a certain number of units, and you pay per unit, which I suppose does financially reduce the significant cost of a whole vial, particularly if you're only using one area. But within the first week of that model happening, we had a nurse in Brisbane who had her toxin, and they actually did them in pre-drawn syringes. So they delivered pre-drawn syringes of toxin to her front door after hours and left it out the front when she was next to something like a child's dance academy or something. So you had pre-drawn syringes of toxin left for anybody. We know how often parcels get stolen from people's doorsteps, but out the front. Luckily, she had got somebody to get it for her. But again, we're talking about the pharmacy going, this isn't right. And when we actually spoke to the Medicines and Poisons Regulation Unit, I said, hang on, so you're allowing pharmacists to make up the medication and send it to my clinic. And they're like, what did they say? They're safe at doing. They're trained to do that. And I'm like, I've been a nurse for more than 18. I'm very well trained at drawing up medications. And as a nurse, I personally do not want to inject something that I've actually not physically seen the vial of. And then when we go down that path, if you're getting toxins that's in a vial, they're now sending it out in vials pre-drawn, which is better. But I've not seen that. What happens when something goes wrong with the patient? Who's actually liable for something? Like, is that tox actually what you gave me? Or was it you didn't have my Xeomin for the day, but so you sent me Botox, but I thought I was injecting Xeomin, and it has what's actually happened? And was it opens up a whole world where you think this is not safe, this is so dangerous, and who's actually liable at the end of the day if something does go wrong?
There's just so many steps for things to go wrong there. And then who's the fall person when something does go wrong, right? It's
Further to that, the other side of the pharmacy model, so when the patient does buy a full vial, that they are actually able to request to take that medication home because it is theirs. They legally own that medication. So once we're finished injecting, what's stopping them from taking the rest of that medication home?
And calling their girlfriends, oh, have you got the rest of your vial? Going on YouTube, there's plenty of
it's all over TikTok. Yeah. We're going to see more black market activity. We're going to see more backyard injecting. Yeah. We're going to see more cases of botulism like what we saw earlier in the year in Sydney.
Which is also a little bit, it's a little bit funny because when I did speak to the medications unit when this all happened, their prime point to me was, well, how do we know that injectors are not taking this medication off-site and they're not doing home jobs? And I kind of just answered back and I said, well, any nurse could do that in any field of any work. They could be pocketing medication here. You don't know. There's always a bad apple in the bunch. We know that. But again, there's no data to support that aesthetic nurses are exclusively doing this crazy behavior. But now they've made it even worse. And it's like, okay, well, we won't give it to the nurse to do. We'll give it to the patient. No sense.
Crazy.
How is it safer? It's not safer.
Yeah.
And actually, I probably hear more reports of doctors stealing medications from hospitals than I do nurses, but that's just
don't want to annoy anyone with that data.
we couldn't release that, could we? Anyway.
Well, it's like all that data that came out and it was all, all the nurses, all these things that are going wrong. Actually, if you go into it, it also included doctors and dentists and, but it was all highlighted that it was just the nurses.
Well, that was the APRA data that was released. I think it was more than 60% of the complaints that came through APRA were about doctors. And I think it was 21 or 23% about nurses. And I think, well, hang on, when you look at the number of injections that nurses are doing compared to probably doctors, and then there's this many more complaints about doctors. So why is it that we're not actually looking at that as the data? And that's the data that we're going off. We are, in saying that, we're actually fairly safe. And when we look at the legislation that's just actually, when we've looked at the APRA guidelines, that have just been released about nurses and the cosmetic industry, they're actually saying that what we're doing is safe and how we're doing it is safe, and that telehealth is a viable method of us doing our jobs. And I suppose that's the latest thing that Tim Nichols actually came out with, is that he's trying to remove telehealth from our industry. And I'm thinking, how are you doing this when APRA have just released their guidelines that say that we're actually practicing safely under this model? I can't quite put two and two together to make it add up.
And like removing telehealth, couldn't then that open a can of worms? Okay, what about like rural and remote areas where there are nurses who are operating without doctors on site, who are utilising telehealth, who have medications on site?
They just want it from our industry. So he only wants to remove telehealth from the cosmetic industry. He doesn't want to remove it from everybody, just us.
I don't understand what his issue is with our industry. Like, what does it matter to him if people are getting cosmetic treatments? What does it matter if people want to feel good about themselves?
Because like shock horror, people actually want to get these treatments.
And it's all hidden under the guise of like, this is patient safety. Like, we know it's not. It's clear as day. And I think personally, that's why they won't meet with us, is because they know that we're going to come at them hard and fast with the statistics and the facts, and they can't back it up. They truly can't. There's another agenda here.
But if this is about patient safety, and we've said this to them from the beginning, because we've had, a couple of meetings with Maru and Queensland Health, but we said, if this is about patient safety, then give us a poisons license. Give us the standards that you expect us to all reach. Make sure that we are reaching those standards, that we have a designated person in the clinic who is reliable, safe, trained in this industry. Make us all reach that level. And if we're all reaching that level, we then know that we are reaching very high standards. We know there's cowboys. Let's get rid of those cowboys by making the standards as high as possible. And let's do it that way. But don't write us out of the industry, because most of us are actually doing this safely.
Yeah, 100%. That's it. Let's raise the bar on the qualifications rather than worrying about, the medication, or like the new TJ and APRA guidelines about, don't be funny on social media, no humour, no singing, dancing. Like when they took away, all the injectable stuff, we had to learn to dance and kind of be humorous and to get some patients in. And the latest one about don't post too frequently. Like, what's too frequently? Worry about the qualification of the injector, not, how many times a week they're posting on their story, right?
And that's what it is. It's not, we want to be held to those standards. We want everybody else to be at those standards, because I'm sure we all know somebody who's probably not at that standard. So let's either train them or get them up to a standard that's safe.
Yeah, eliminate, being able to do a 1 or a 2 day course and, off you go on your own. If you do that, then you have to go into a clinic and work under an experienced injector and things like that.
Absolutely. I think with the benefit of a poisons license is it levels the playing field, as Lisa said, but you can then harness the stats on who's doing what and, how many of those adverse events are nurses, doctors, dentists, because at the moment we're really relying on, we're pulled together and then trying to tease those out through APRA and whether or not they've been disciplined or audited or any of those things.
Yeah, and then the media will jump on that and, the headline will be about nurses.
Yes. There's an organisation called Operation Redress who have really shone the spotlight on our industry, but we've been, what's the word I'm looking for, really pigeonholed in that, the unsafe environment. But why has it been nurses? Why are nurses being targeted? It feels like a witch hunt. But when the incidents that have happened have been unlicensed, unregistered providers, not nurses, but somehow we're looped in together. And the media has had a field day with that. So trying to change that
the narrative
message and the narrative has been an uphill battle.
And I think Operation Redress, they are specifically, I suppose, focusing on the advertising and the marketing around our industry, and they have their own agenda when it comes to that. But in a way, they're not wrong to some degree. There are still a lot, and we all know that there are still a lot of clinics who are not following the guidelines. We may not agree with what APRA and TGA are saying in terms of our advertising, but they are there and they have been there for quite some time. So we're talking more than 18 months that we haven't been able to say filler or anti-wrinkle online, yet we are still seeing everybody saying filler, anti-wrinkle. It's coming to before and afters. We know that everybody's still putting their before and afters online when we're not allowed to, but everyone has been, I suppose, in this industry for quite some time, and their mentality around it and not wanting to change what they're doing has been really hard. So they're not wrong in that nurses are still doing the wrong things in terms of TGA and APRA, but it's not a safety we're not physically harming those patients and that's not their focus either. So that's really hard. So, I still speak to nurses every day and they say, no, I am compliant. And I look at their website and I'm like, you are not even close to being compliant. And they're like, oh, but I'm allowed to say that because such and such says that. I'm like, yeah, but such and such is also not compliant. So, it is really hard to understand. And you do have a lot of other people out there doing the wrong thing. So everyone thinks that they're allowed to. So.
And patients also, it's really confusing. Like I've had patients coming to me for skin treatments who've then said to me that they've gone elsewhere for injectables because they thought I didn't do it because I don't post about it. And I said, well, because that's non-compliant. And they said, yeah, but such and such was posting about it, so I went over to them.
Exactly.
It's really confusing. And, like you said, Lisa, it doesn't help that people are still non-compliant, but also the flip side of that is it does impact our businesses when we can't have before and afters and pricing. And, we've changed our business name and all of that. We've taken a huge hit in terms of that new patient acquisition, and I've had to fully pivot and pay for advertising like I've never had to pay for advertising ever because of those changes.
And it seems crazy because I don't know, people don't know what we actually do. It's almost taboo. And then the ones who do advertise it and still do the wrong thing, essentially, they're on the wrong thing every single day. But in saying that, it's also not nurses. It's not just nurses. So, I look in my immediate 5K radius, and I do all the time, as most people in business probably do. And even the doctors within my local area, none of them have taken dermal filler. Nobody's taken anti-wrinkle off their websites, but it seems to be very targeted just at nurses. When I'm like, well, hang on, that clinic down the road is a doctor-led clinic. I had one who is only maybe 2Ks from me. He's still been practicing, yet he's been deregistered for 2 years. And I'm like, hang on, it seems like he's not even a nurse and he's a doctor, but nobody seems to be targeting them.
And I agree with you on the doctor thing. In my radius in Bondi Junction, it seems to be the doctor clinics who are still, they've got the before and afters, they've got the pricing. I drove past one in my area the other day and they've got the before and afters, upper face from 400, masseters from 500, plastered across this huge screen at the front of the clinic. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, and I'm here worrying about having to change all the signage of my business name because it had the word injector in it, but it hasn't had, pricing and before and afters for nearly 2 years.
We've seen a lot of that on social media as well. A lot of, unfortunately, doctors coming to us and saying, well, we're a doctor, we don't need to abide by that. And I don't know in what world are we reading different documents here, and we shouldn't be pitted against each other. We should be unified, and we both need each other. We all have different roles, but I feel, unfortunately, some doctors have kind of just been like, oh, well, that's for nurses, they're below us, we don't have to adhere to that. And there's been a doctor online who has specifically put it in writing, I'm a doctor, I don't need to do this applies to nurses only. I'm sorry, but advertising, and that applies to all of us. So something as simple as that. And yeah, we're kind of getting pitted against each other, I guess.
Yeah, and it
We've
seems
also
to be
got
this divide.
the flip side with doctors who are now opening clinics saying, we're a fully compliant clinic, you can come and work for us. And if you're a nurse-led clinic, just come and work under us. But the fees associated with that is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
I was just like, are you actually trying to put us completely out of business just by paying you for being oversight? And what are you going to do? Sit there all day? I don't know. It's really quite a scary part that we're in.
Yeah. And I think when we've got nurses, doctors and dentists who form this cosmetic industry, it's like everyone needs to comply. And once we can, find a way forward, we can have a set of guidelines that make sense for everybody. That's, definitely the way forward. So on that, what is the mission of Queensland Aesthetic Nurses United?
To highlight what's going on, the ludicrous nature of it, to rally for a poisons license like our counterparts have, and the ability to potentially have an endorsement if there is going to be a possibility of nurse prescribing, then can we have the infrastructure around that as a specialty to, look into this pathway going forward? So big picture, we know it's not going to happen overnight. We also know that it's fairly easy for Tim Nichols to make an amendment to the current legislation, but only he can do that. A poisons license is obviously going to be a longer pathway. It's certainly, not, we're only in the infancy of our, it feels like years already, honestly, but we really only started in May of this year. And we've certainly brought awareness, so who else wants to take over from there?
I think patient safety is the biggest thing. We do want it to be around that. We want the data. We want to be consulted. And that was something that we did say to them from the beginning. We were told in one of our meetings that once nurse prescribing came in, they would think about the legislation and how they may change that. And I'm like, but I doubt that they would allow us to do that. And I said, but if this is the case and you are looking at rewriting the legislation around our industry, why do we not have a working group? Why don't we have industry representatives that we can get together and we can make it safe and sound for the whole industry and bring it as one? But she said that she would think about it and bring it to the table, but we haven't obviously heard anything about that. And that was at least 3-4 months ago. So we're pushing, I suppose, for the industry to be consulted throughout this whole process and not just told how we have to act when it's not safe and it doesn't make sense. And I suppose we really don't want this to come nationally. We do hold grave concerns that it will. And from the meetings we've had, that was the implications. I suppose that was what they were trying to imply, without telling us directly that this is what they're hoping. And if that's the case, I'm sure that we will have a lot more people behind us. In Queensland, we don't really have a lot. We know that people are really scared, and that when we've, been trying to do more and more, we have quite a small group of core people and a couple on the outskirts. But, we know that we're at least 600 deep in nurses, but nobody is probably putting their head up. Everyone's really concerned about
becoming a targeted.
Being audited.
Yeah. We know that audits have happened. We haven't heard of any just recently, but I'm sure that they have been happening, and everyone's just a bit too scared to say anything. We've had obviously quite a few reporters who want people to speak to them, particularly ones who have been audited, but nobody wants to speak to the reporters because they're concerned again that they will be followed up. So it's hard to get that recognition out there of what's actually happening because the nurses are frightened, and everyone is just trying to, even even we're trying to scramble to make yourself compliant so that you're not doing the wrong thing. And in the meantime, it's still just going ahead, and I feel like they're forging more and more rules that just don't.
Yeah. Well, now's the time for everyone to back us and stand up, because if we don't have a voice now, then where's this industry going to end up? Are our businesses going to be closed in 12 months' time as nurse-led clinics?
Yeah. And like you said, if it goes, nationwide, it's just going to get worse and worse. So with the current petition that you guys have, tell us about, signing that, and there's also the option to donate as well. How does that help?
So I think the push at the moment for us is to get to 10,000 signatures, because I think it holds a little bit more weight if it's presented then. So basically what you're signing for is the option of a poisons permit in Queensland, so we can continue to run our businesses as nurse-led clinics and not have to go down this pharmacy path or hiring a doctor to have control and custody of our medications.
And how many signatures are you up to?
About 7,000.
Yeah, I was just about to look.
Yeah.
So I think after Britt's reel went viral, there was a few more.
We're just under 7,000. We would obviously love 10,000.
You are so close.
Yeah, it's hard. Again, we do try and push it a lot, and I suppose the donations were really because we were trying to get some lobbyists at the same time, and we've actually had several meetings with different lobbyists to try and get this pushing forward. And interestingly, two of them, one was fine. The second one said that they couldn't be our lobbyists because they had conflicting interests, which is a very interesting thing, because we're like, well, what is the conflicting interests and how is it that you're not able to help us? Because initially they really did want to help us, and they just said, this just doesn't make sense. And we're like, we agree. But yeah, it's trying to find the right lobbyist that, again, doesn't cost a fortune, because we're all still trying to keep our businesses open at the same time as trying to fight these. But again, we're going to go back and say the fact sheet doesn't actually depict the legislation. So that's the grounding thing. When you read the legislation over and over again, there is nowhere in the legislation that says, you have to have a doctor physically in your clinic, practicing your specialty 3 days a week. That doesn't exist. That is just how they're interpreting it, how they want us to practice, but it doesn't say that.
And if you think about it, what other area of medicine does the doctor even know where the medicine cabinet is, let alone what's in it?
Or have access to it.
Right? Like, you think night shift in the hospital, you could go a whole shift without seeing a doctor.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that continues to, sorry, I got a cattail in my face, continues to surprise me, is that doctors rely so heavily on nurses in most fields of medicine. And again, this isn't a them versus us situation, but they are explicitly handing over all the power, Tillicum, they are handing over all the power to doctors and completely eradicating us as nurses who have predominantly worked in these industries. I have never worked, I did 3 months in another area, but I've always been in aesthetics. So I teach doctors how to do this stuff. Yeah.
I think
as a nurse, it is our role to order, to count the drugs, to store the medications. So why is it different in aesthetics?
Mm. And now there's nurse prescribing in primary care because we have a doctor shortage. So, which one is it? There's double standards here.
And like S8 medications as well, and we can't even store S4s.
Mm.
And I
So
think they're forgetting the whole time that they think that nurses are in our clinics all alone and that we're just practicing and doing our own thing. But actually, the whole time we are actually working in conjunction with doctors. Our doctors are there, and I don't know about, I know you girls script too, but our scripting doctors are there whenever we need them. So if there's an issue and there's a problem, we're contacting them straight away. We have the emergency medications and we have access to them. So it's not that we're doing our own thing at our own will and we'll just inject whatever we want in our clinics. We are working with doctors. We are not alone. And I don't think they quite realize just how heavily regulated we have been in terms of our locks, our cupboards, our fridge temperatures, our drug books. I think they just don't realize that we are very well regulated already within our own companies.
Finally, sorry, Matt, you go.
I was just going to say, and also what difference does it make that, the medication being labeled? Why does that then make it safe for us to store it? Because that makes no sense. It's still the same medication.
Well, who benefits? Who actually is? That's the big question here. Who actually benefits from this? It's not the patient. It's not the nurse. Questions.
Do they want more nurses in hospitals? Like, there's no way I'm going back there.
To go back to the hospitals, some elaborate plan.
Yeah, push women out of business.
Even the new grads that are coming out of like universities, they're not getting jobs in hospitals at the moment either because there's not enough jobs for them. So they say that, they need more nurses in hospitals, but it's not that they need more nurses, they need more experienced nurses in hospitals, and they want us all back there. But I personally, I still work there, but I could not go back full time. When you realize a life where you can be part of your family's life instead of being at the hospital at 6:30 every morning when Osh Care doesn't even open until 6:45. That is a life that I can't go back to at the moment when my kids just need you. And that's what it comes to for me. And I don't know, I get to enjoy my patients. I've always had long relationships with my patients being oncology, so I've known them for a very long time, and I now get to do that in an industry where it's not so sad. So I like that.
Mm.
With your happy patients. And just to backtrack with all that safety as well, I wanted to mention as well for maybe people who don't realize, like with these scripting, services, the doctors that we work alongside with every single day, with all these new changes, like the scripts are so specific now, the dose and the area, and you forget something, you're like, oh my gosh, and they're like, oh, I actually did want the lip flip. And you're like, well, we're actually going to have to call back again, because I'm like, I can't put it, because we've got these electronic drug books now and all of that. Like it's, every unit is accounted for. So like you said, it's not like we've just willy-nilly got all this product and we're like, oh, well, what do you want today?
It sort of has shone a light on a couple of things for that for me, because that's personally how I've always worked. But there's been a couple of webinars where people have said, but what happens when I'm just doing cheeks and I just want to put the last little bit somewhere here? I'm like, no, that's not how we work. And that's something that we really want to stop, because that's not the right way of doing something. So we know that, and we don't want that to continue. Sorry, you can take that out if you want, but I'm just like, that's not something that's not safe, and we don't want people injecting like that.
Well, that's the thing, and it's flushing out all of that and making sure that your scripts cover, okay, well, we're going to put some in your cheeks and some in your lips and some in your chin and have that. And like some of my scripts are massive because, they do want a little bit everywhere, but at least then I can go through and put exactly what I've put in every area.
And I do the same thing. So like if people don't want big cheeks or you're able to just spread a little bit, it comes down to budget. We know that with a lot of patients. They may not have a huge budget, but they still want a tiny little tweak here or there. So you have to make sure you're scripting for absolutely everything in that one script. So it's really hard.
And disposing of it at the end of it.
Well, and all of the waste now too with that pharmacy model, like can you imagine the amount of product that is just being thrown out every day?
It's crazy. Insane amount.
But scary that the patient can now ask for that.
Take it home.
It's like,
but then that has nothing to do with patient safety.
No, that's a hard no.
Yeah. Now, we mentioned a little bit, but should we talk a bit more about the nurse prescribing that was announced last week for Australia, but not for the cosmetic industry?
Honestly, you guys would have seen the reel.
It was
That's how
good.
I felt. I just felt like, what is going on? Could we be further excluded as registered nurses? Let's not forget, we have all done our degrees. We have all, like, we could not be further excluded. And they continue to say, you know, aesthetics is not a specialty. It's not a specialty. It's not this. It's not that. You are treating us as a specialty in terms of your regulations and all these rules and all the come down on us. But you will not give us any pathway to, you know, we can't become NPs. We can't prescribe either should that pathway come through. You know, we can't even possess medication. What can we do? What, like, if there was like a Christmas party for nurses, I don't feel like we'd even be invited.
Sit down and be quiet, little girl.
We would not be on the list.
Yeah, it's very mean girls.
It's very
Yes.
offensive. It's very frustrating because we spend so much time. And I think because of this regulation and how we do work, we devote so much time to our learning, and we do that at our own costs and our own, you know, I take our own initiative to do so. We're not being pushed by anyone. We're doing this for us, for our businesses, and ultimately for our patients. So we spend so much time upskilling, and we are just stonewalled at every turn. And it's just mind-blowing. I saw that it is, but it's not. It's kind of like, oh, like, couldn't expect anything more. But I think it resonated with so many nurses in the aesthetic industry, because it's just like, why aren't we good enough to do that? Why are we, you know, what
Got the same degree as everyone else.
And this is something that we do day in, day out. If we took this to, you know, a hospital nurse who doesn't have experience in the field, just like I couldn't slip into an ICU, to be honest, like, probably might have a better chance of slipping into an ICU than a nurse coming into the aesthetic field. You know, it's, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is. So we've touched on it a few times, but what are the goals and what do Queensland nurses want to be able to move forward?
A poisons permit, please.
Yeah. And it's not like it's not like Queensland Health are having to make this up. It's like other states have done it. Is it Victoria, Tasmania and Western Australia have done it. So it's like, copy their models, do it. If we do this as a nationwide thing, as you said, Megan, it will, you know, help with that nationwide safety of, you know, where are all these medications and being able to, you know, get all those statistics. So yeah, poisons license.
It would be great if all the states were the same. And I know that's not going to probably ever happen, but for some reason, why is it that you can go across different states and everything's done a different way? That just doesn't make sense at all. If we had national guidelines, which were just released, it would be amazing for those guidelines to then be allowed across the states and us all work at a standard that is high, very high. But not differently to our other states. But for some reason, Queensland just wants to be a little bit different.
Patient safety shouldn't vary state to state.
No.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If it is about patient safety.
Yeah.
And listen to the people on the ground doing the work, because that's where your guidance comes from. We know the ins and outs and the what's and wherefores. We know the complications. We've taken that back to Maru and to the ministers to say, there's a loophole here. You need to close it. That's a problem. That's a safety issue. And, you know, lo and behold, the fact sheets have changed. And I'm pretty sure it's because we've been beaten down a path to say not good enough. That's, you know, if you're coming at us from safety, then listen to us, because this is not safe.
But also at the end of my emails every time to Minister Nichols is, come to my clinic, see how it works, see how what we do is safe, how I consult my patients. And when I'm consulting them, I'm not just saying, when they say, oh, what do you think this is? You should probably get that looked at. Like, we're actually giving not just advice on the aesthetics, and I definitely do not upsell anything that I do. Mm-hmm. And I often talk my patients out of more filler than I do talk them into it, particularly my young ones. I'm like, no, guys, come back to me when you're at least, you know, in your 30s. But, you know, there comes a point where come and see what we do, how safe we are, our standards, our clinics are clean, everything that we've done. Come and meet me, see my family, see the impact that closing us down will actually have. When I see you every single day in our area saying, we're all about small business. Well, you're not supporting my small business, and I'm not the only one in your area. So come and see what we actually do.
Yeah, 100%. So for nurses around Australia, what can the rest of us do to help right now?
Follow us, follow our reels,
Yep.
sign the petition, share the petition, get on board, start advocating in your own states, because
Exactly.
I think this is coming. And
Yep.
I think you would be completely naive to think that it's not.
Yeah, absolutely. The minute I saw it in the group, I thought this is probably going to roll out everywhere if we don't all get together and do something about it. So I will put all the links to follow you guys, to sign the petition and everything in the show notes. So anyone listening or watching can just click straight through to those. And yeah, please sign in the petition. And also if people can make a donation, so you can hopefully get some other people to help you out as well.
I meet a lot of really beautiful nurses. Obviously, when you go to conferences and training days and everyone's like, oh, you're doing such a great job. It'll calm down, is what they say to me. The number one thing is people go, oh, it'll get better. Don't worry. It won't stay around forever. And I'm like, you guys have no idea. And I don't want to scare you, because it is horrible to live through this. Our mental health for the last 6 months has just been, I can't even explain it. But then I also know so many nurses who have closed their clinic because their mental health just can't deal with it anymore. And that's a really sad thing for what we're going through. And when people come to you and they go, oh, it'll get better, I'm like, I love your positivity, but I think you're living in a dream, because if you don't think this is coming for you, you'll be sorely mistaken when you have done nothing about it. And I suppose that's Queensland's biggest issues. We did nothing about it for so long. We honestly thought that our Cosmetic Nurse Association would help us. And it was one thing that was told to us from the very beginning: join the Cosmetic Nurse Association. So we all joined in the hope that they were helping us. And it was proven pretty quickly that there wasn't a lot happening from their perspective. And that's actually why we joined and formed Queensland Aesthetic Nurse United, because we were just lost. We had, a meeting with them and nobody knew what was really happening, and we were all just like, what just happened on that meeting? We need to have coffee together. And that's actually how this all started. We all had coffee. I'd never met Megan, I'd never met Britt, I'd never met anyone at the table, but I just was like, I can't do this on my own, because unfortunately we're all nurses in our individual clinics all alone, and we're just so scared as to what's happening. So we needed a group.
Yeah. And the groups of people who you think are going to support you through this then don't. That's so challenging.
On that, we've actually formed a bigger working group nationally through ABIC, because we are a grassroots collective. We're not an organisation, but we've actually gone under the umbrella of the Australian Business Industry Council and formed a working group nationally for change. So if anyone wants to join us on that, we would welcome you with open arms. There will be all sorts of jobs for you to do. It's
and
not
nationally,
paid.
Yeah. Nothing that we've done
not...
is making any money. We're not pocketing anything from this. This is coming out of our own time, because we just feel so passionate about protecting our own businesses. And when people say to us, just hire a doctor, I'm like, oh yeah, because we have the funds for that. But also, personally, that's actually defeating what we're trying to achieve. We want our businesses to be our businesses, not run by other people. And that's the other side of why we're trying to fight so hard, is we want this to be ours. This is our little side of the world that we don't want someone else to take over.
Exactly. And yeah, that financial aspect, the amount of people I've seen in, the chat groups that have, financially, they're like, I cannot afford to continue. A lot of us are one-woman shows. So, there isn't that, team or, that ability to be able to do that. And then, like you touched on, that mental health aspect of people just going, this is all too much, and this sort of ever-changing situation and trying to navigate that. It's really sad.
No, it's been really hard for everyone. We're still human.
We've got other stuff going on in our personal lives as well, and it's pretty hard when your business is being hung out to dry by the Queensland government.
Yeah, but
Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me. That was such a good chat. I feel like we could honestly talk all day on this topic, and we may have to do a follow-up episode, especially because it is an ever-changing situation in Queensland. So thank you to Lisa, Brittany, Megan and Rhi. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well done, guys.